The young men gathering outside the compound had come for a wedding. Women stirred pots over open fires. Children ran between compounds, laughing. Relatives arrived, carrying gifts. From a distance, it looked like a celebration. And it was. But hidden beneath the joy was a truth few outsiders understood. The bride standing quietly inside the compound had already paid a price greater than any bride price her future husband could offer. 21 years earlier, she had walked away from her family, not because she was getting married, not because she was beginning a new life, but because she had been given to a shrine. She entered as a child. Now she was living as an adult. Now she stood as a grown woman. The guests had seen a bride. Her family saw something else. They saw 21 years. They saw 21 years of bondage, 21 birthdays, 21 planting seasons, 21 harvests, 21 years that could never be returned. And the money being exchanged that day was about to do something nobody thought was possible. It was about to buy her freedom. But to understand why a wedding became a rescue mission, we must first understand what 21 years had truly cost. Time moves strangely in stories. A storyteller can describe 21 years in a single sentence. Real life does not work that way. Life is lived one day at a time, one missed opportunity at a time, one ordinary morning at a time. For Ugo, the first years were filled with hope. She expected to return home. Then, she expected to return the next year. Then the next year. Then the year after. And eventually hope became patience. And patience became resignation. And resignation became a routine. Outside the shrine, life continued moving. It was moving forward. Friends married. Children were born. Families expanded. Villages changed. Roads improved. New faces appeared. Old faces disappeared. Nigeria itself changed. Yet Ugo remained trapped inside a decision she had never made. The deepest losses were invisible. No scars was recorded on her. No documents listed them. No ceremony acknowledged them. The childhood she never finished. The friendship she never kept. The choices she never got to make. The life she never had to change a chance to build. There were losses no one could measure. And there were losses no one could ever return. Yet, while Ugo's life stood still, something else was changing. Knowledge. The belief that has placed her there was beginning to face a challenge they had never encountered before. The challenge of modern medicine. Many years after Use and Egu died, another member of the family became ill. The symptoms looked terrifying and familiar. The cough, the weakness, the weight loss, the blood. Other relatives felt immediate fear. They had seen this before. The memory of the oracle's warning still lived in their minds. People whispered that the cause has returned. Some feared another funeral. Others feared another generation would be lost. But this time, events unfolded differently. The patient was taken to medical professionals. Doctors examined him. Tests were conducted. Questions were asked. And eventually a diagnosis emerged. Tuberculosis. Not a cause. Not a spirit. Not revenge. A disease. A contagious disease. One capable of spreading from one person to another. Suddenly, the death that had haunted the family for decades began to make sense. Use had likely been infected. Egu had spent months caring for him. Egu became infected as well. The symptoms matched. The timeline matched. The medical explanation fits each other. What generations had interpreted through the language of supernatural punishment could now be understood through science. The discovery changed everything. And at the same time, it changed something. Because understanding the truth could not undo what had already happened. Knowledge had arrived, but it had arrived late. Very, very late. 21 years late. The medical diagnosis created difficult questions. Questions nobody wanted to ask. Questions some people actively avoided. Had they misunderstood the deaths? Had fear pushed them into decisions they would never otherwise have been able to make? Had a child carried a burden she never could have carried? The family found no easy answers. Older relatives remember the terror they felt after Use and Egu died. They remember believing their household was under attack. They remember fearing starvation. They remember fearing more deaths. People often judge the past with information available only in the present. But the fear changes the way people think. Fear narrows possibilities. Fear makes extreme choices appear reasonable. Fear convinces people that survival matters more than certainty. And in the atmosphere of fear, Ugo had become the solution to a problem she did not create. The tragedy of the story was not that the people were evil. The tragedy was that frightened people often make desperate decisions, and desperate decisions can leave permanent scars. For Ugo, those scars were measured in years, 21 of them. Yet, after 2 decades, something was finally beginning to change. A young man wanted to marry her because she was a beautiful lady. And for the first time in many years, the future looked different from the past. When the news of the marriage proposal spread, excitement returned to the family. But beneath the excitement lay a complicated reality. Ugo was not entirely free to get married. Tradition she connected her future to obligations created decades earlier before her. This was not merely a marriage negotiation. It was a negotiation of liberation. Every discussion mattered. Every agreement mattered. Every contribution mattered. The elders met. The families discussed expectations. Customary requirements were reviewed. The process moved slowly. No one wanted mistakes this time. No one wanted complications. For Ugo's relative, the bride price represented far more than marriage. It presented possibility of redemption of Ugo from bondage and to grant her freedom. For the first time in 21 years, a realistic path towards complete freedom existed. Months of preparations followed. Conversations continued. Agreements were finalized. Then eventually the day arrived. The bride price would not simply unite 2 families. It would redeem a life that has been suspended for 21 years. The payment was prepared. The ceremonies were organized. And a day many people believe would never come had finally come. That is the day of freedom. Freedom really arrives the way people imagine it. Sometimes it does not come with celebration. Sometimes it comes quietly, one step at a time, a breath at a time, one realization at a time. And for Ugo, the moment was difficult to describe. How do you celebrate the return of something taken 21 years earlier from you? How do you recover a childhood? How do you recover usefulness? How do you recover years? The answer was simple. You do not. Some losses cannot be reversed. They can only be acknowledged. As family members celebrated the wedding, many people felt 2 emotions at the same time: joy and regret. Joy because Ugo was finally free. Regret because freedom has come so late. Years later, some members of the family will quietly revisit the old story. The goat, the accusation, the beating, the deaths, the shrine, and Ugo. Looking back, many realized something painful. The blinded man had not destroyed the family. The deity had not destroyed the family. Even the disease had not destroyed the family. What really destroyed them was fear. Fear of shame, fear of rumors, fear of unexplained illnesses, fear of consequences nobody fully understood. Fear had turned suspicion into violence. Fear had turned tragedy into panic. And fear had convinced an entire family that sacrificing a child was their only path to survival. The cost of that fear was measured not in money, but in years. 21 of them. As the wedding celebration came to an end, Ugo paused for a moment. She looked towards the path she had once walked as a child. 21 years earlier, she had traveled the same path in tears, confused, afraid, unsure of what would even become of her, whether she would one day return to her village again. Now she stood before them, a free woman, older, wiser, changed forever. But freedom and recovery are not the same thing. Some journeys end, Some scars remain, and perhaps that is why Ugo's story will matter today, because every generation faces mysteries it does not fully understand. Every generation faces fear. Every generation must choose whether fear or understanding will guide his decision. The tragedy was never simply the disease. The tragedy was that knowledge arrived after damage has already been done. And that is how a goat, a rumor, a lost eye, 2 deaths, and 21 stolen years became one of the most painful stories in family that a family would ever tell. This is not just the story about a marriage and about a child being given out to a deity. It is a story that reminds us that knowledge damages ignorance. Thank you for joining the African Archive, where stories that shape Africa past are told to educate the future. Thank you.